UN aid officials in Sudan are still trying to fully access the impact and assess the impact of that major dam collapse in the eastern part of the country. So far, at least 30 people are dead and dozens more are still missing. The dam gave way Sunday when it was overwhelmed after torrential rain. It is the main water source for Port Sudan region, which has a population of more than 1.5 million. The United Nations says about 50,000 homes have been affected by the flooding, and humanitarian groups warn that drinking water may soon be in short supply. And all of this is coming as the country will mark its 500 days of a civil war today. The Sudanese armed forces and paramilitaries continue to battle for control of the country. It has been devastating, and millions of people have been affected as a result. So for more on this, we have reached Susan Page. She's a former U.S. ambassador to South Sudan. She's also served as senior advisor to the U.S. Special Envoy for Sudan and South Sudan. Ambassador Page, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you for having me.
Ambassador, as I mentioned, today marks 500 days of this ongoing civil war. According to the latest reports, 45 million people are in desperate need of aid, especially as the country is facing a famine that is described as ravaging the people there. 12 million are displaced, and nearly 2 million of those are now refugees in neighboring countries, and 2.5 million people are expected to die from hunger by the end of the year. And yet this is called the world's forgotten war. Why have we forgotten Sudan?
There are a number of reasons for, one, this devastating conflict, but a lot of it also has to do with the actors and players that are involved in what is going on in Sudan. The fact that the crisis, the war, has really been externalized with a number of different players and countries engaged on one side or the other for their own interests means that there's lack of pressure on either the Sudanese armed forces or on the rapid support forces to really understand the conflict, the effects that the conflict is having on the population. And it's demonstrated that they don't seem to really care. They want to keep fighting for what is in their interests, and the population is the one that are the ones suffering.
And because this war is often not talked about, Ambassador, I wonder if we could dig a bit deeper into who these fighting parties are. The SAF, the Sudanese Armed Forces led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and then this breakaway group of the Rapid Support Forces, which has its roots in the Islamist Janjaweed militia. So what exactly are they fighting for, and who exactly is winning at this point?
Right. Well, I'm not sure I would quite qualify the RSF as the Islamists as much as they are led by a man called Hemeti, is sort of nicknamed as that. But yes, basically formed under Sudan's Bashir, President al-Bashir, to fight against the parties in eastern Sudan, in Darfur, back in 2002 and beyond. But what's happening is that the Sudan Armed Forces is receiving some support from some of the neighboring countries, such as Egypt, and the RSF is receiving some of its support, military support, from the United Arab Emirates. And the UAE has a lot of countries that are aligned to it for their own purposes. And so it's very difficult with the number of parties that are involved. Each side has recruited a number of others to fight their battles with them. And so there are now a number of actors. Even if they're not all involved militarily, they are aligned with one side or the other.
You mentioned the people on the ground and the millions of lives affected. Can you talk to us about what has happened in these 500 days to those people in Sudan?
Yes. So the conflict broke out. I mean, 500 days is obviously a long time, but to put that in more context, the war broke out between these two warring factions who had been part of a formerly sovereignty council, that they had made a pact. And then war broke out between the two of them and their forces aligned with them when it came time to integrate the RSF into the Sudan Armed Forces. That's sort of a snapshot. Since that time, April of 2023, that's when this broke out. There have been bombardments. There's been looting, rape, pillaging. People have been displaced, moved several times as the war has gone from one place to another. And control is being taken by the RSF in a number of locations and then by the Sudan Armed Forces in other parts of the country. So people are just trying to find safe places to go, and there just aren't that many of them left.
There were hopes, or as fleeting as they were, that perhaps something could come of those ceasefire talks that the United States and Saudi Arabia were trying to organize in Switzerland earlier this summer. Neither party showed up. Neither party agreed to the limitations of that particular type of position to have a conversation. I wonder where things stand at this point. What would it take to reach a resolution?
Well, it's difficult because the parties don't seem to be facing the real ramifications of the conflict, in part because of their benefactors to a certain extent that are elsewhere. But if there could be a building on of support for the agreements that did happen back some time ago in Jeddah, the humanitarian agreements, and the at least commitment, not that they've been following it, to abide by international humanitarian law, that would be a start. However, both sides have put onto the negotiations their own restrictions and what they want to happen and occur. And that's making it very difficult. The South wants to be recognized as the, quote, legitimate government, and the Rapid Support Forces want to be known as being able to make a deal and at least trying to claim that they are being diplomatic. Both sides have been credibly accused of war crimes or crimes against humanity, and certainly massive humanitarian violations. But something has to be done to put pressure on both of them and their backers to allow, one, for humanitarian assistance to get into the country and to be able to feed the people, and also for them to put down their weapons and so that they could get to a democratic transition with civilians leading the new government.
Ambassador Susan Page, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for helping us tell a little bit of the story of Sudan.
Thank you very much.